It's a strange time to be a filmmaker. They tell us the cinema is dying.
Let's understand the consumer's not going to the movies like they used to. Why not go buy Netflix?
More people say they prefer seeing a movie for the first time at home on a streaming service.
AMC is carrying a load of debt. Cineworld recently came out of bankruptcy. The major 6 studios put out 25% less films this past decade than the one prior. Worldwide box office revenue is down 50%. Mid-budget films have been dying out, and the few films that are dragging the movie industry along are superhero films and films of long-running franchises that have been beaten to death. So for new filmmakers, they are left with the options of making low-budget documentaries or slice-of-life dramas, or somehow making their way beyond the gatekeepers of the major studios. But what if there was another way? What if I told you that these clips right here are not from blockbusters, but instead are from fan films?
Fans don't want to be on the outside anymore. We've moved to a new level of intimacy and collaboration and connectedness. We want to be inside the world.
Technology has advanced way beyond what we're used to. Now there's the democratization of filmmaking, and then you have crowdfunding, and the studios don't know how to react to it. Like big corporations, they react by rejecting it, rather than figuring out how to embrace it.
Fan films were once known as janky-looking homemade films with friends, but over the past decade, this has become a legitimate subgenre of filmmaking, and they seem to be popping up everywhere. In some cases, this has caused a battle between studios and fan filmmakers. But in other cases, this has been a launchpad for aspiring directors. If we are witnessing the democratization of filmmaking, at what point will fan films be indistinguishable from studio films? At what point might the studios reach out to the fans to create a partnership?
Three of you get together, you make home movies. Lots of kids did that. You guys, though, a little nutty in how extreme and how detailed you got.
A little obsessive, yeah.
Fan films started off as home movies that friends would make together, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't still go to great lengths to try and make these films look good. And the most famous one was the complete recreation of Raiders of the Lost Ark by 2 kids in Mississippi.
These kids were successful in recreating the movie. They premiered it on the big screen, and they were even reached out to by Steven Spielberg himself. This took 7 years, and they needed to pull off a lot of dangerous stunts, but this wasn't the only fan film to attempt stunts like this. A Spider-Man fan film from the 90s had their lead actor swing from a rope out of a tall apartment building.
People ask all the time, why did you swing from that fire escape? Why did you swing around that building? The simple answer has always been, I needed the shot.
Trekkies had been making fan films for decades, and one of them even had George Takei return as Sulu. Another fan film was just a trailer for a Batman and Superman team-up film, starring famous bodybuilder Mike O'Hearn as Superman.
Lots of people enjoyed these old fan films, but they were still cheesy homemade movies, far from cinema quality, until one day in June of 2010, when everything changed. And this actually happened by a complete accident.
I actually was dumb enough to not know how to send a private link on YouTube. And I think it started going up with anyone who would search Mortal Kombat. It popped up. But I had intended on sending it to a colleague for some music notes because it actually wasn't done.
Mortal Kombat Rebirth was made in one weekend for $7,500 and was meant to be a concept pitch to New Line for a Mortal Kombat series reboot. Unlike previous fan films, this one had stars like Michael Jai White and a professional crew, but 2 years later another fan film like this was released, and this one was based on The Punisher, and it starred Thomas Jane. It was the first in Adi Shankar's bootleg universe, but then it was followed up by a dark Power Rangers fan film that went so viral that it was actually pulled from YouTube.
It's categorized as a fan film because it's a film made by people that are not profiting off it, that are using a pre-existing IP and playing around with it for no profit. My intent, as opposed to most fan films, is very different. Like, as a non-fan of the material, I was going in there to play and explore what you can do with an IP like that,
There were several other high-quality fan films, including a Gambit film and an Uncharted film, and this new wave of fan films also had bona fide Hollywood stars like Eric Roberts and Nathan Fillion. But these fan films existed on opposite ends of a spectrum, as we had a divide between professional projects made as a pitch to Hollywood studios and homemade projects made with groups of friends. But then, crowdfunding started to bridge this gap.
Spider-Man Lotus had some heavy-duty VFX work, which means that it required a lot of money. While there were fan films in the past that raised a lot of money through crowdfunding, there wasn't one led by a 17-year-old that raised over $100,000 off of just a suit and an idea.
I've been wanting to do this my whole life. I remember when I was, far back as I can remember, I was playing with action figures and shooting movies on my iPhone, and now, because of every single person here and everybody who couldn't make it, we made this thing happen, and it's real now.
Gavin even had shout-outs from John Watts and Andrew Garfield, and his story was one of a kid with a dream who persevered through a nearly 4-year process to make his own superhero film that would go on to have its own big-screen premiere. It was ultimately a success, as Spider-Man Lotus racked up millions of views in just the first 48 hours and launched Gavin's career as a filmmaker. But not all fan films with huge fundraising yields have been successful. A proposed Star Trek fan film called Axanar raised over $1 million and has yet to see the light of day after nearly 10 years.
It was ruled by a federal court that Alec Peters personally profited off of the Star Trek intellectual property, that Alec Peters used donated funds on himself to fund and support his lifestyle. In fact, Alec's own records even prove that, and we know they are legitimate because he fought for a decade to keep them hidden.
Even though the Star Trek fan film has yet to be delivered, lots of other fan films raised a significant amount of money and delivered high-quality products, like the Batman fan film Dying is Easy, which raised $77,000, or the Voldemort fan film, made for about the same amount, or the Friday the 13th fan film trilogy, Never Hike Alone, which raised hundreds of thousands of dollars.
These fan films are mini vacations to go out and create the things that, like, we only wish we could work on. These are the opportunities that are afforded to filmmakers with fan films. So not only are fans getting something, a fan is getting to live a dream, fans are getting more content, and, you know, sometimes some charity money is raised, sometimes, you know, some good is done, people get the chance to shine. You know, you get to see artists who have never had an opportunity to shine before. They get to do special effects in a film, or an actor who you haven't seen before.
Since about 2017, high-quality fan films have become more common, and there has been at least one new one each year. But in 2024, there are at least 10 fan films that are released or scheduled for imminent release that have budgets over $20,000 and a high production value.
I am Logan, the Wolf.
Logan the Wolf went viral for its insane fight choreography, and The Spider racked up over 5 million views for its darker take on Spider-Man's origin, as did No Man's Land, which brought the Alien franchise to a World War I setting. A Green Lantern fan film with a sharp-looking lantern suit is coming soon, as is an intriguing Batgirl series, a badass Batman Beyond film, a long-awaited Jason Todd origin story from the popular YouTube channel High Top Films, and an impressively grand-looking Spider-Man miniseries called Monsters of Manhattan.
If you've got money laying around, give it to people that really deserve it, you know? People that cannot have any other option but to raise it through Kickstarter. That's what I think Kickstarter is for. It's for people that cannot have access to these funds, do not know rich people, cannot go to their friends and get any money and stuff like that.
Fan films are a big opportunity for the filmmakers, but they can also provide the audiences with something that many of them have felt starved for: good content. Fan films certainly exist on a continuum, and some are much better than others. But audiences haven't been too thrilled with many big studio films over the past couple years.
People were walking out of the theater!
Oh, sorry, was that Indiana Jones movie I just saw?
That was the dumbest shit I have ever seen. How do these things keep getting made?
Many people compare today's Hollywood to that of the late 60s, which was the end of Hollywood's golden age. TVs were now in almost every home, there was foreign competition, budgets were overbloated, and the content was stale because of major changes in the culture. In 1963, the film Cleopatra was released, and it was considered the box office bomb that broke the camel's back, as its budget rings in at a whopping $440 million in inflation-adjusted dollars. Studios were going bankrupt and were desperate, so they started cutting small checks to who were then young and unproven filmmakers.
In the 70s, was a different thing. The 70s is sort of like a golden age of American cinema, along with the 50s and the 40s and 30s, because you had a lot of actual personal films, original voices making films. Robert Altman, Bogdanovich, Cimino, a whole bunch of Coppola, Spielberg started, Lucas, all of that sort of thing, and De Palma. And at that time, it was the time of the director.
Today, streaming has had a similar effect as TVs in the 60s. There is foreign competition from places like Korea, and many big-budget films like Indiana Jones 5, The Flash, or even the most recent Mission Impossible are flopping hard. Revenues for 4 out of the 5 major studios were down last year, with Disney and Paramount taking 9-figure losses. It might seem like I'm getting ahead of myself by suggesting that studios would actually cut checks to fan filmmakers, but that's exactly what they did after Mortal Kombat Rebirth, when they financed 2 seasons of a web series called Mortal Kombat Legacy. But not all IP holders have responded so kindly, as Saban had the Dark Power Rangers fan film taken off YouTube days after it had been launched and racked up millions of views. This dispute was settled quickly, as the fan film just needed to include a disclaimer in order to be reinstated. But the Star Trek fan film Axanar had a more protracted legal battle after Paramount and CBS sued them. This was also eventually settled, with the help of J.J. Abrams and Justin Lin.
We started talking about it, realized that this was not, an appropriate way to deal with the fans. The fans should be celebrating this thing, like you're saying right now. We all, fans of Star Trek, are part of this world, and so you went to the studio and pushed them to stop this lawsuit, and now within the next few weeks it will be announced this is going away, and fans will be able to work on their content.
Typically, an aspiring filmmaker would make an original short film, which is usually self-financed, submit it into film festivals, hope to get into the best ones, and then hope to meet the right people when they do. It's akin to winning the lottery, because if these things aren't achieved, this short film will fade into obscurity the moment the festival circuit ends. Fan films have a much longer life and give aspiring filmmakers the chance to build an audience.
Kenobi, when we did Kenobi, that hit 1 million views in 24 hours. And that's why you do those, because your work the whole name of the game is to get your work seen, right? You want people to say, oh, this person knows what they're doing. You do a fan film, it's just more eyeballs watching what you're doing.
So how is it that fan films could possibly resemble studio films in any sort of way? For starters, anyone who has seen an ad for Unreal Engine knows that their capabilities are, unreal. The game has changed in the world of set design, as many companies offer massive libraries of objects and entire environments. This opens the door to amateur filmmakers to make epic-looking films, but CGI can also become a crutch and makes a movie look fake when it's overused. Fortunately, it's also easy to find unique locations, both in the US and abroad. The 2 films that I've produced were made in Estonia and Lebanon, and in both cases, I just showed up in these countries and assembled crews there. The recent sci-fi film, The Creator, took this to the extreme, as they filmed in 80 locations around the world. The Creator delivered a beautiful product on just an $80 million budget and a $4,000 camera.
What we tried to talk people into was basically we were going to go around the world to the best locations there were. Like, for instance, when you weigh up the price of building a set versus the flights, the cost of flights for a crew to go to the greatest place on earth, if you've got a small enough crew, it's cheaper to just go there. And so we were like, we're going to have a small crew and just go to all these great, wonders of the world type thing.
What fan films have shown, going all the way back to the 2 kids in Mississippi in the 80s who remade Raiders of the Lost Ark, is that if there's a will, there's a way. We are living in an age that has seen the decline of the movie star, and one where having a social media presence is crucial for young filmmakers, due to endless competition for people's attention. Fan films are going to become even more common, and this competition will continue to drive their quality up. The question is, will the studios try and shut this down, or will they start to take advantage of this booming new trend?